To the Excellencies, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of SDPI team, I welcome you to this online panel discussion on accelerating SDGs achievement and building back better from COVID-19 pandemic in South Asia. This panel discussion is part of the SDPI's 23rd Sustainable Development Conference, which is a 4-day conference with the theme Sustainable Development in the Times of COVID-19. For this particular session, we are grateful for the support and collaboration from United Nations Economic and Social Commission for Asia and the Pacific, South and Southwest Asia. Let me give you a brief background to today's session. The online panel will bring together the heads of the South Asian think tanks in an interactive session to share their perspective in addressing the challenges of COVID-19 and how regional cooperation can assist the sub-region in building back together. I would request Dr. Nagesh Kumar to start off the session with his opening remarks. Sir, over to you, please.
Hello, everyone, and good morning and good afternoon. Your Excellency, Miss Romina Khurshid Alam, the Member of National Assembly and member of the Parliamentary Taskforce on SDGs, my dear friend Abid Suleri, heads of 6 think tanks, South Asian think tanks, which are also members of SAN's core group. Excellencies, distinguished participants, it's an honor to welcome you on behalf of UNESCAP to this session jointly organized by SDPI and UNESCAP. And as you are familiar, UNESCAP has been a regular participant for the previous SDCs, and we always find this as a very vibrant regional South Asian platform to share ideas. This panel also is the first one happening after the SANS, the South Asia Network on SDGs, was launched on 2nd December at the 4th South Asia SDG Forum. And all of you, my friends from think tanks, were partners and participating in that. So I want to really welcome the Honorable Chief Guest, Ms. Romina Khurshid Alam. You know, what I like about this parliamentary task force on SDG, I think this is a good practice to bring parliamentarians into a close group, cutting across party lines. And this is a good practice which I hope other South Asian countries will also emulate. I want to just get started our discussion, and all of you will be sharing the perspectives from South Asian countries. I want to just share 4 key messages, these key messages are from a paper that UNESCAP recently prepared, and you are familiar with it. And I see now on the screen Mr. Riaz Fatyana. Excellency, welcome to this forum. I have been I have had the pleasure and honor of interacting with you number of times in SDPI, previous SDG forums, SDCs, and also in South Asia Economic Summit in Colombo. So it's always a pleasure to have you with us, Excellency. So what I was saying is that I want to quickly share 4 messages from this report that we brought out on COVID-19 and South Asia. Firstly, that South Asia entered the pandemic with a low level of preparedness, and in particular, the slow progress on SDGs. So it has exposed the gaps in public health infrastructure, universal health cover, universal social protection, basic amenities such as sanitation and ICT connectivity, which are all SDG goals. The pandemic, so the second point, quickly going to that, is that pandemic and the measures taken to contain have had very severe consequences for the South Asian societies and economies. MSMEs, we know, which form the backbone of all South Asian economies, have been very badly impacted, leading to loss of lives and jobs, and international trade, tourism have collapsed, hitting badly the exporters and tourism operators, not only in the smaller countries like Maldives, but also in Sri Lanka, Nepal, Bangladesh, which exports garments and all. And the South Asian economies, which had become actually one of the most vibrant and dynamic segments of the world economy, are going to be contracting or shrinking for the first time in last 40 years. And but much more importantly, the loss of jobs and livelihoods are likely to push up to 130 million people. This is a calculation that we did on the basis of CG modeling in South Asia. So wiping away, the development gains of a whole decade, not only some years, but a whole decade, if that happens. So we need to work together to stop that loss from happening. And the other thing which is also written all over is that the vulnerable sections of society, whether women as healthcare workers or garment factory workers, migrant workers, older persons, persons with disabilities, they have been affected much more adversely. So inequalities are rising. And there is a lot of discussion these days on the rising inequalities, particularly in South Asia. The third point I am going to share is that national strategies for recovery need to focus on build back better, not to go back to the status quo ante, with more inclusive, sustainable, and resilient future coming out of it. So recovery plans, strategies will require a large people-centered, inclusive, and sustainable stimulus. And governments are very much trying to do that. Our estimations suggest that the size of stimulus would vary across countries in South Asia, but it has to be very large. In every country, it is between 7 to 14% of GDP. And I think what has been done is very much on the right lines, but we need to do much more to get really sustainable recovery. And for managing a once in a century kind of crisis such as this, no effort is too large and too big. And we should, for the short term, set aside the targets of fiscal prudence and announce credible strategies of returning to fiscal prudence once the crisis has abated. The packages should provide, the livelihood security and beef up public health infrastructure. And this is what exactly South Asian governments are doing. In Pakistan, for instance, SARS program has become a major pillar of social protection in these times. In India, the scaling up of Narega scheme has been there. In Bangladesh, the cash transfers are being used. So all different countries are trying to assist the poor and the vulnerable, and of course, scaling up medical facilities. But these stimulus programs could also be intertwined or combined with public works that create sustainable and resilient infrastructure. For instance, projects combining with waste to energy or micro hydels, home solar, etc. They would give more bang for the buck. But in the medium term, we need to move towards universal social protection and universal health coverage. I think this is the writing on the wall from this crisis, if there is any. and of course reviving or reigniting the South Asia's growth engines, the MSMEs, through immediate infusion of funds, which is also being done by most of the government. And my final point, Excellencies, is that regional cooperation, whether in the framework of SAARC or BIMSTEC or BBIN or UNESCAP or even bilateral cooperation, can play an important role in complementing the national strategies. And of course, we have seen the leaders of South Asian countries meeting virtually right in the beginning in March itself, and setting up an emergency fund of South Asia, SAARC emergency fund. We need to build on that initiative to harness the unutilized potential of intra-South Asian trade through a comprehensive economic partnership for accelerating recovery, especially in the context of collapse of international trade. The global trade, as we know, has collapsed, and so South Asian intra-regional trade, which is sort of a lot of underutilized or unexploited potential, could become a driver of growth in the coming years. Financial cooperation under SAARC finance has been something which has been used and drawn upon. The swap lines that we had have been drawn upon, especially by Sri Lanka and Maldives. And this is one facility which possibly could be expanded. We can also look at the criticality of strengthening surface transport links, and so that the supply chains and especially in medical supplies remain on track. And in the coming years and coming months, this vaccine and medical supplies trade could be very critical for combating this COVID. Cooperation could also be helpful for enhancing food security and enhancing climate resilience of agriculture, and in fast tracking the clean energy transition of South Asian countries. We know about vibrant hydroelectric potential and trade. Now Bangladesh tapping into Bhutan and Nepal's hydroelectric potential. So these are the kind of things which we need to do to expedite and accelerate clean energy transition of South Asia. I mean, digital technology is the one technology which has become a savior in these times. And so what are the key lessons and good practices that we have all invented to deal with the challenge, and how to share them? That is also very critical. And finally, South Asia is a highly disaster-prone region. While we were handling or dealing or going through the pandemic, there have been number of cyclones. There have been attacks of locusts on several countries in South Asia. So cooperation in dealing with these emergencies and disasters through early warning systems and in managing them would also be very critical. So to sum up, therefore, COVID pandemic poses a mammoth development challenge for South Asia, threatening to reverse hard-won gains of development of a decade. This extraordinary challenge requires equally extraordinary response, but our objective should not be to go back to the status quo ante, but to build back better through a large, inclusive, and sustainable stimulus packages that decarbonize the economies while creating jobs and incomes, and move towards universal social protection and universal health coverage. South Asian cooperation has the potential to complement national strategies in building back better, and we at UNESCAP stand ready to work with all the stakeholders and to work with the groupings like SAARC, BIMSTEC, BBI, and all other frameworks to take it forward and assist the sub-region in exploiting the potential of South Asian cooperation uh, the framework of SANS, which has just been created with the support of all of you, is one such framework to expand the scope of collaboration and to facilitate sharing of good practices in South Asia. So, with those words, I want to really welcome all of you, and we look forward to this interaction. Over to you, Abid Bhai.
Uh, Thank you, Nagesh, for setting the scene. First of all, let me welcome all the thought leaders from South Asia, and please join me in congratulating Mr. Riaz Fatyana, who was down with COVID, and I would really appreciate his dedication to the cause. I think it's only yesterday or day before yesterday, he got his negative report for this COVID, and he has joined us. Thank you very much, Fatyana Sahab, and of course, you are a champion of the cause. Fatyana Sahab is also the convener and head of the task force, Parliamentary Task Force on SDG. I'll also take this opportunity to welcome Ms. Romina Khurshid, member National Assembly and a member of SDG Task Force. The reason we have both Ms. Khurshid and Mr. Fatyana here. Mr. Fatyana is from Treasury benches. Ms. Khurshid is from opposition benches. But we wanted to show the solidarity that for sustainable development goals, there is a political consensus in Pakistan, and of course, the parties in the parliament, they have agreed on this agenda, how to build back better and for recovery and not to lose track of SDGs. So thank you to both of you. Before proceeding further and before bringing in the heads of think tanks from South Asia, Ms. Khurshid is traveling from Lahore, so if I request her to share her thoughts, and then of course, once she's on motorway, she may not have the stable connection. Then Romina, whenever you have time, you have strong signals, you can again join in. But if I request you to share your thoughts in 5 to 7 minutes, and then we'll take it further.
Yeah. Well, very good morning and good afternoon, everyone. It's Romina Khurshid Alam, and I'm really, really very thankful to all of you who is in this panel. I'm very much honored for this opportunity. It's a great learning opportunity, and I'll try my level best to be in online wherever I got the strong signals. And I really want to come back on the point because I know the time is very short, and I would love to learn more from others. And everyone who is on this Augustus Forum, really great to see you all. And I wish that one day we can see each other personally and physically. But anyways, thanks to COVID as well, that we are going to be more high-tech and getting connected into it. But anyways, coming back to the point, I believe that SDGs is a sort of an issue on which we all are together. I don't think so now it's anybody's, we can say that this is this country issue or that country issue, because it's an international, I think we become a more international family. In a way that, because of course climate change, if you take a subject of a climate change, the environment affect everyone. Like if I'm doing something in my country, that impact can goes to another country and it travels. So of course we all have to, and as Mr. Nageshwar was talking about the SARC and different forums, I really believe that it's a forum where we can talk with each other, we can learn from each other practices, from the best practices. If we talk about Sri Lanka, Bangladesh or Afghanistan or any country, whoever so is doing something, I think it's a great moment where we can learn, and not only learn, we can come up with the policies, we can come up with the sort of international treaties on which SDGs can be help a lot, because at the end, it's all because when we talk about the human rights, when we talk talk about the global warming, if we talk about the child and mother health. So these are the issue which everyone is discussing, and it's an issue of every country. And when we talk about the human rights or these things, so I believe that SDG is the figure. SDGs is a forum where everyone is together and everyone's issues are somehow are the same, because most over the SAARC countries or internationally, people are suffering with the same issues. Well, as I want to talk about, take this opportunity to share some suggestions, or of course, I'm going to learn a lot. But as we have worked this is my second term, and I was being the part of the task force last time as well, and this time. But of course, that time I was in the government, and we tried, and same here now as well. We are trying to work. I've engaged few of the university students; those are working as well. I would really like to give a great credit to SDPI, because they are the ones who start talking about the SDGs from that time. Like nobody was even taking those initiatives. So it's a great credit to them that they help a lot in the awareness among the people. Not only the people, they try to do the capacity building of the members as well of the parliament. Of course, members of the parliament can play a huge role, but I would really like to give a suggestion that from this forum that we should come up with the international SDG forum, where we can become a committee or where a place where we can get together. And because there are some issues which as I mentioned earlier, that we can come up with the legislations, we can learn from the best practices if we'll go through with Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, and different other countries. So we can learn from that as well. So I believe that a forum, a sort of a committee or a forum where all the members can work from this forum, and they can come up with the suggestions, and then how we can help each other. Because I believe it's moreover, as I've mentioned earlier, that it's moreover a family SDGs, I believe, is that where issues are same. And because almost the conversations, if we'll see for the SAARC countries as well, it's almost the issues are same, the problems are same, so and the solutions could be the same. So as the development partners, if I see, I frankly and very openly, I must say that the development partners can play a very, very key role in that. They can help us in the regional cooperation for building, for the better solutions, like in the South Asia forum sort of there, where the development partners, the organizations, the researchers, they can help a lot. And I believe, and from that, we can get so much benefits from this. If we talk only about the pandemic situation, I think there are so many things on which we can work, like if we talk about the poverty, if we talk about the health issues, malnutrition, and other things. So I think somehow in this pandemic issue, the regional partnerships and corporations can bring a huge difference, huge impact, and come up with and their efforts and solutions can come up with the national and international solutions towards it. And if we talk about the challenges, I must say that, of course, in every country, most of the country, the people are suffering from the economy downfall. And of course, so many people who are in the poor sector, like the people who are going, if we feel them, like the people under the belt or under the poverty level as well. So, sometimes they don't have a meal. So they don't care about what the COVID is going to do with them. We all know it's a great challenge for a person to stay at home, and they cannot go out, and they can't earn. So how they are facing the challenges, how the organizations, how the development sector, how the organizations can help, and how we can work for them, because as now huge world is on the online system or on the IT, but those poor people who can't afford one-time meal, they are unaware from these things. They don't know how to earn the bread. So I think these sort of special challenges which we are, every country is facing, especially the countries who are developing countries, they are not the very much developed countries. So how all countries can help each other, I think these are also the very big challenges, and especially the education education, the child who is suffering from the education, like the system is being collapsed, because most of the people, they don't, if we again talk about those people who are below the average, like they can't afford one-time meal. So they don't have the IT systems or iPads or gadgets where they can teach their children online. So I think that is also a very huge challenge. And then, of course, health, or then most of the thing, because we all know this COVID bring us, I think it become, the COVID is some sort of a situation where every country has to think in another way now, that how we can help our people, how, in which challenges, and like how we have to cater our people, especially those who are like mother-child health, especially, and then the children, and then psychologically a huge trauma. We all know that the people are facing. Either they are from, it doesn't matter, they are from elite, they are from middle class, they are from the poor class, or they are from which class. So I think these sort of issues we all countries are facing. So here, I think I suggest and I request again to SDPI and to this Augustus Forum, that we should come up with some sort of a mechanism and organize or sort of a caucus or some sort of a forum or force where we all can sit together, we can meet up more, and moreover, and on SDGs, we can discuss on the things. And then, because in 5-6 minutes, it's very hard to bring every point on the agenda or on the meeting, but I tried my level best, that whatever I was having in my mind, and of course I need to share these things. And as from the Parliament side, of course we all are trying our level best, but due to COVID, unfortunately the Parliament is also not working in that way. Because, and as it's not that I'm from the opposition, so I'm trying to criticize, not at all. I just want to say that because on these things, we all are on the same page. Because of course, if the people are going to be there, then of course that some politician or the member of a parliament is going to come over there. But I requested that we need to come up with this proposal as well, that the parliaments also should come on the virtual side. Because it's very important, rather than to make the system paralyzed or they won't work. It's much better that the things should come on the virtual side, so the policies, so the decisions would come up more actively and fruitfully, the results and the will come. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, Romina, for your very passionate and heartfelt comments. And of course, the two suggestions, I think first, thank Romina for setting the scene. Being a people's representative, perhaps she has highlighted some of the things that this panel should discuss today. And second, her very practical suggestion that understands if we can also have some sort of network of parliamentarians from South Asian countries, in the countries where they have SDG task forces, perhaps we can bring them together. Thank you, Romina, and back to you, Rajan, and Nagesh for proceeding it further.
I have requested Rajan to do the moderation henceforth, and Abid Bhai will come back as to present Pakistan perspective. Rajan, over to you.
Thank you. Good morning and good afternoon, all of you. Apologies for these last moment change, but I know there are many pressing needs and demands coming from Nagesh, and then Abid Bhai, he is arranging. So sometimes you need a stopgap arrangement. So I am temporarily trying to fill it in, though my apologies in advance. I did some background work, but I was not ready for moderation. So please forgive me for certain things. But we have around an hour. So maybe what we can do is we can go for one round. And I will request all the panel to perhaps take 6 to 8 minutes time in answering to the questions which has already been circulated to you all, but I will just shortly read it out for your benefit, and would request you to dwell on those issues And then maybe if time permits, we will go for a second round, and I see some comments would be coming on the chat box for the questions. So before I start, this panel has already been, the tone has been set, but we are looking for exploring some more insightful views from all of you on the challenges of COVID, especially relating to economy in general in the countries. I saw one of the panels today morning talked about governance and government and what are the things required, but perhaps here also we will go much larger in looking into what kind of legislative, policy and administrative efforts which are required in the coming years to accelerate the achievements towards the SDGs. One of the mandate of ESCAP is to promote regional, sub-regional cooperation. As Dr. Nagesh has already said, one of that which very successfully South Asian think tanks in collaboration with ESCAP have demonstrated by establishing SANS. So what we can, South Asia, how can it benefit from SANS or through sub-regional cooperation, going beyond the national efforts, and further what role as think tanks you see for the development partners, including like ESCAP, to promote regional and sub-regional cooperation in building that better in the South Asia. So I will, after these, on these questions, maybe we'll go as per the program. So I will ask Mr. Nazir Kabiri from Biruni Institute of Afghanistan, part of our network think tank. Nazir Bhai, you have the floor. And I will remind you after 6 minutes, just a tinkle. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Rajan Ratna of the UNESCAP, and thank you SDPI and UNESCAP for the invitation. And I also would like to congratulate the SDPI for the 23rd round of successful Sustainable Development Conference being held successfully annually in Pakistan. I would like to start with some basic macroeconomic figures from Afghanistan before I proceed on my suggestions in terms of the regional cooperation. Afghanistan's economy was fragile even before the COVID-19 crisis. Economic growth only averaged around less than 3%. Due to the combined impacts of declining grants and increasing insecurity and political instability in the country. The COVID pandemic has further plunged the Afghan economy into a deep recession. The economy is projected to contract by 5.5% according to the World Bank, and by around 8.2% according to the estimations we have at the Institute. And poverty rate forecast has increased from nearly 55% in 2017 to around 80% in 2020. This means that around 8 million additional people in Afghanistan would fall below the poverty line. On SDGs, the major development in Afghanistan has been the successful integration of SDG goals, targets, and indicators into the national planning, endorsed and presented at the recently held Development Conference on Afghanistan in Geneva. On the SDG financing, my humble suggestions are as following. Domestic and external financing for SDGs already fell short of expectations prior to the COVID-19 pandemic. OECD estimates that external private finance inflows to developing countries would drop by $700 billion in 2020 compared to 2019. No single source of financing could close the financing gap for SDGs in post-COVID situation. For Afghanistan, ODA still remains the largest source of development financing, where ODA to aid ODA to GDP ratio at the moment stands to 40%. And aid, international grants finance around 75% of public expenditure in Afghanistan on and off budget. Afghanistan will continue to rely on international grants by 2035, even under optimistic scenarios. So with that, COVID is a great opportunity to revisit the structure and effectiveness principles of international aid regime. However, our humble experience in Afghanistan suggests that donor behaviors in international aid regime is difficult to change. Moving forward, and in order to fully articulate and realize the sustainable development aspirations of Afghanistan, as reflected in the national SDG framework, the government needs to instigate an integrated approach to planning and financing. One solution could be private capital. COVID-19 has offered an opportunity to push the governments to improve policy frameworks for private investment and private capital. On that, we note that governments were reluctant previously in accelerating business reforms. So COVID now is an opportunity to look into the reform on doing business indicators and so forth. For some countries in South Asia, as domestic revenues were strongly affected by COVID-19 related economic slowdown, in Afghanistan's revenues dropped by 15 to 20% this year. And as external financing is not immediately accessible, tapping on private sector is the next best option. There's a major room to improve policy recommendation, policy environment for the private sector, for the private capital. And that being enhancing capital account policy, ease of capital inflow restrictions that can exist, that exist at the moment can only be coordinated internationally or regionally. On the regional cooperation for building back better, we suggest that perhaps to start with, a regional cooperation mechanism around vaccination program could be a good idea. Second, to further enhance regional trade and cooperation, an analysis by UNDP shows that if regional trade expands, it would significantly increase growth in the region. If cost of trade in SAARC decreases by 10%, it would boost Afghanistan's GDP by around 4 percentage points per year. An additional 4 percentage points in real GDP growth will significantly accelerate achievement of SDGs in Afghanistan. To mitigate the disruptions in global value chains in developing countries, including South Asian countries, investment policies should be enhanced to provide additional incentives to maintain foreign investment in these countries. Tap on the potential of public-private partnerships could be another area. In some South Asian countries, the legal framework for PPPs still needs to be improved, including in Afghanistan, and also the institutional arrangements of the PPP is really important. PPP offers huge potential in health and infrastructure in South Asia. To sum up, Dr. Rajan, I argue that in post-COVID, there will be better appreciation for the potential that the private sector could offer. Thank you.
You were not on time. Thank you very much. I really admire your discipline on being so focused that once you finished, my timer started beeping. So excellent. Thank you very much. And thank you for bringing certain perspectives on Afghanistan, on impact on poverty, and what I SDG financing, ODA, etc. But I really like many of us and many people think COVID brings a challenge, but I think you rightly put it out. COVID also brings the opportunity to bring in policy changes which were otherwise erstwhile very difficult to do. But now this is time when government can bring certain changes. And definitely, yes, we also have been promoting, and I know all of you think tanks heads are also promoting. There are political tensions in the region, but there are several common challenges with the sub-region faces. And one of them is also when the vaccination comes in, and why not we can promote a kind of a cooperation or some kind of cooperation on this. So thank you very much. And now I go to Dr. Fahmida Khatun from Bangladesh. Madam, you have the floor. You are muted, I think. Please unmute yourself.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes. Good afternoon. Thank you very much, SDPI and UNESCAP, for inviting me to talk in this panel. And I once again congratulate SDPI for the 23rd round of this Sustainable Development meeting. To my two previous speakers have more or less covered all the issues, so I don't have anything to add, but to reiterate some of the issues which have been mentioned and highlighted, because more or less the South Asian economies are similar to a large extent in many areas. So what I will highlight will not only be the issues of Bangladesh specifically, but also relevant for the other countries. So the challenges, the special challenges in general, in fact, if we look at the structural transformation of these economies, South Asian economies, we have seen that more or less they have followed the similar structural transformation, that from a predominantly agricultural economy, it has moved towards in manufacturing sector and then to the services sector, and services sectors now contribute significantly, in fact, the highest in Bangladesh in the GDP. However, if we look at, and also the growth momentum has also increased, and particularly in case of Bangladesh, we have seen that we have been able to achieve a high growth for the last decade or so, and there is also some sort of macroeconomic stability that we observed. And on top of that, the economic changes have also led to social changes, positive social changes. However, if we look at also the benefits or the outcomes of this growth pattern, we find a number of weaknesses or limitations of this, that broadly the quality of growth aspect. The quality of growth has not been such that it can benefit everyone, because though there has been structural transformation, we still find that most jobs are created, or most of the labor force are involved in the agriculture sector, particularly in case of Bangladesh. Though the share of agriculture in the GDP has declined to 17%, once upon a time it was 80%. Now, with this 17% contribution, about 40% of the labor force is engaged in the agriculture sector, which means that there are underemployment, and there is also productivity issues, that everyone is not productive at the same level, and also the manufacturing sector has not been able to create enough the job creation in the manufacturing sector has almost stagnated. And on the other hand, the services sector, though that has increased, the share in the GDP has increased, but again the scale of services sector, that's not also improved, because for more job creation, you need scaled up services sector, not just small shops or roadside businesses, all these, but you need formal sectors, large scale services sector. So that is the pattern. And then again, what we are discussing all along in every session is that this growth has not been inclusive, and the benefits of growth has not been distributed equally across everyone in the society. So inequality, in fact, in case of Bangladesh, though growth has been, before COVID, we had seen a growth of 8.1%, 15%, but inequality has been increasing. And this inequality is not only in terms of income equality, but also consumption inequality and wealth inequality. So that's another weaknesses of this growth. And then at what cost we are doing this growth? We have discussed in the previous session that the sustainability of that growth from the point of environmental sustainability, and as the South Asian countries are vulnerable to the impact of climate change, they also suffer from various environmental degradation issues which are created within the country. It's not, of course, climate change is the result of global economic activities, but there are some environmental issues which are created at the domestic level because of many issues, including the lack of governance. And then, of course, the that brings me to the issue of institutional strengthening. Though we are observing a good growth, but institutions have not been strengthened. Institutions are rather being weakened day by day. So these are the major features. There can be many more, but in the interest of time, I'll not dwell on this. But coming to the second issue, that what kind of policy changes or administrative efforts should be taken in order to address this. But COVID, in fact, has exposed the weaknesses. During any crisis, the weaknesses flashes out. So that has happened in case of COVID-19, and many challenges have been intensified. So the issue of healthcare management had been one of the biggest issues across the world, including the developed countries. So in order to recover from COVID-19, and also in order to move forward, some of the issues which we have highlighted earlier also, that we have to have more fiscal spaces, but we also see that in South Asian countries, particularly in case of Bangladesh, resource generation or resource mobilization is a big issue. I'll come to the issue of development partners role later, but now I'll focus only on the domestic resource mobilization effort. So tax GDP ratio is very low. In fact, in Bangladesh, it is even lower than Nepal, which is a smaller country. And why I'm comparing, because Bangladesh's growth is so high, but the domestic resource mobilization is not increasing at that rate. And then, so there has to be a policy change and also administrative efforts, because this issue is being hammered on and on, but we have been suggesting for many measures. For example, the use of technology can be one of the ways to solve many problems, because tax avoidance is high and the tax net is very narrow. So in order to expand the tax net and also to capture those who avoid tax, use of technology can be one of the biggest tools, actually. And also the integration of various systems, institutions, for example, the National Board of Revenue, the commercial banks, and also the identification, the National Identity Authority. All these, if they have an integrated mechanism through technology, then it is easier to identify that who is earning how much and who is not paying according to their requirement, according to their according to what is required from them. So this is one. But again, apart from technology, human resource capacity is also a big issue. It's not only the number of people who but also the skills development. I would also focus on the issue of labor market policy, because the unemployment is another issue that with growth we are not seeing enough job being created. So the education policy which is now in place, that has to be revisited and revised. And then in case of healthcare, because COVID is basically it originated from a health crisis which had spread to other areas. Universal health care is another area where policies have to be taken in, and also social protection issue. The third issue area is regarding the regional cooperation. This is one of the important areas in case of dealing with COVID-19, because we have seen that over the period, the regional institutions and in fact the global institutions have also been weakened. But one cannot, countries cannot live in isolation, and during crisis period, the need for regional cooperation becomes all the more important. I would highlight that in the areas of trade, investment, connectivity, human resource development, particularly education, and also healthcare, in the initial period of COVID-19, dealing with the health management issues, now the issue of vaccination has come. So that is one of the biggest area for regional cooperation, and also technological capacity building. And of course, when we talk about Build Back Better, another issue is the climate change, because this is also a cross-border issue. And the role of the development partners, it has been highlighted by the previous speakers that we are seeing, the multilateral development cooperation or multilateral organizations have not been very, their role is, diminishing, in the sense that there is a huge financial gap in terms of implementing the SDGs. And no country till now is on track in terms of fulfilling the SDGs. And there is a finance gap, estimated finance gap of $2.5 trillion. So how this financial gap will be met, that's one of the reasons, that's one of the important and crucial, I think, policy agenda for the countries of South Asia. So I think my time is up. We can discuss later on in the second round. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you, Fahmida ji. Thank you very much for bringing in some of the important lessons relating to structural transformation issues, inequality, and institutional issues, as to how there's some integration in the governance need to be taken. And definitely there are many issues which you have pointed out, and they are very relevant for SAARC: in connectivity, regional integration, health, education, technology, etc. Thank you very much. Let me now call upon Professor Dr. Sachin Chaturvedi from India for your review, sir. Please.
Thank you. Thanks, Dr. Ratna. At the outset, I must thank SDPI for their very, very active role in the region, and particularly to Abid Bhai for his dynamic leadership at SDPI. I would also like to thank Dr. Nagesh and Dr. Ratna for giving a shape to our collective aspiration of SAARC, and I think it has taken shape very well since we last met in Delhi, and it was later launched. It is not very easy to take floor after Dr. Fahmida Khatun. She covers such wide range always that it makes very easy for us to step in. And I'm very thankful to Nazir Bhai for giving the broad overview of the areas of cooperation. Dr. Ratna, I would just make 4 points and would stop. My first point would focus on production capacity that we need post-pandemic and during the pandemic, that has illustrated the point. The second point would be about decarbonizing the recovery, as was also mentioned. The third is about digitalization of payments and the related infrastructure that we need. And the fourth point would talk about scope for regional cooperation. And I would try to do that in the 10 minutes that I have. So the first point is in terms of production capacities. And I think we could have saved a lot of lives, and we can be a little more pessimistic, but I think the accomplishments are quite impressive, and we were taken aback when the pandemic broke out, and so were the many other countries. In fact, I would say that the North-South divide, that distinction has blurred away with the pandemic, and we find that it's not just the South, and generally we feel self-pity all the time that we did very bad, but I think all the South Asian countries have done fantastically well given the constraints of fiscal space, as Dr. Fahmida Khatun mentioned, and also the macroeconomic challenges that Dr. Kabiri talked about. So I think our accomplishments have been simply impressive. India, for instance, has ramped up the production of COVID-19 protective gears, of medical equipments. We were not producing it at all, and central government required 2.22 crores at very high pace. And would you believe, in 3 months, when Prime Minister constituted the 11 empowered groups, one of the group's responsibility was to ensure production of these facilities. And within 3 months' time, a huge capacity came up. And now, at this point in November, the industry is of 7,000 crores. Can you believe an industry which is in an infant stage in March, in November is 7,000 crores? That's the turnover we could achieve. And now India is producing 1.87 PPE kits every day. That's the quantum, that's the leadership, and that's the industrial connect that India could establish during COVID-19. If you look at the situation of ventilators, in March when we started, and by end of April when we realized that ventilator is going to be crucial, India had only 19,398 ventilators in the country. And at this point, we have 7.8 lakh ventilators available in the country. And that's the production capacity that we have. So the point here is that if South Asia determines, we are able to deliver, and we could deliver. We had the wherewithals, we had the willpower, and we could go on. The same applies to hydroxychloroquine. As you know, the pressure enhanced from our friendly countries to export it, and our exports increased from 12.23 crores to 30 crores per month. And that was Prime Minister's direct call. And Prime Minister, I think, was the only Prime Minister that could visit 3 units, one in Hyderabad, one in Pune, to see the vaccine preparedness. And as you know, India is listed with these 3 vaccines, only one of the few countries from the South to have figured that. And this gives a huge scope for cooperation among the countries. And fortunately, with Bangladesh, with Afghanistan, with Maldives, we already have signed pre-purchase agreements for these vaccines. That's the strength of the South Asian private sector, and that's the strength with which we are working. And I would not stop in this list. Also, don't forget about the oxygen cylinders that were needed. We started with few thousand, and now 1 lakh oxygen cylinders are being supplied by Indian industry at various levels. So to say that we were caught unaware and we could not handle the crisis, I think is not correct. With a very strong, assertive leadership, India could perform very well when it came to the crisis management. I think decarbonizing the recovery is a very important point that Dr. Nagesh made in his initial remarks. It is extremely important. At the United Nations summit that was organized in partnership with the UK and France, what was called as Climate Ambition Summit 2020, it has become very clear that several countries are well placed to abide by the Paris Agreement commitments. The summit was largely to showcase our nationally determined contributions and DCs, and also as we move towards net zero climate finance pledges that are needed in terms of providing the resilience in climate change. And as we are getting set for COP26 in Glasgow, we are trying to move forward in terms of how we green the recovery phase. And solar energy is an important dimension here, with $100 billion to be invested in Indian solar sector. The targets have been raised pretty high by 2022, and we are thinking of 100 gigawatts, both the on-grid and off-grid connect. The idea is also to provide the one sun, one world, one grid idea of electrification in rural areas, and South Asia can really do that. My third point, Dr. Ratna, is more about finance, and I think on 4th of November, all the central bank governors met, and they have launched what is called as SAARC Finance Sync. And this is, I think, a very important initiative by all the central bank governors under the SAARC process to bring central banks on one platform to discuss the recovery measures. Today, I don't have time to get into what Reserve Bank of India has initiated in India to supplement the fiscal efforts by RBI-led processes for strengthening the banking architecture for coping up with the post-pandemic recovery phase. But I think the close partnership and cooperation among member countries at the SAARC platform would take the idea of SAARC finance further. And at this point, RBI is leading the initiative, and I think it's an important dimension. My third point is about accelerating the digital transformation. And I think here, the central bank officials from Nepal, Afghanistan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, and Maldives all were in Delhi and in Mumbai, some of them in virtual format. India has launched what now is being called as 24-hour digital transfers that are important in terms of real-time gross settlement, RTGS. And since yesterday, it has been made full-time, 365 days. It's a huge transaction now. $500 billion is the digital transaction quantum. It has expanded 55% with 50 UPI-based wallet providers, 45 mobile wallet providers. So the digital transaction phase has expanded to such a capacity that now India, Singapore are partnering on e-commerce platform. So it is very important that the neighboring countries take advantage of this new prowess that the Reserve Bank could provide leadership in. And now with artificial intelligence and big data, IoT, the social objectives of banking are now being accomplished. Yes, quickly to close as my time is about to finish and I have just 50 seconds. I see that regional efforts are required, and as Dr. Fahmida very rightly mentioned, we need to work in the realm of multilateral processes. She gave example of climate change. I would like to very much say that in WTO, the forthcoming WTO summit, we need to work together and explore possibilities. The idea of CDRI is important when we think about the disaster resilience. And last, as I close, it is important to say that the S&T partnerships are important for the national knowledge network that India has launched to be taken to partner countries in South Asia. Already Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, and Bhutan have become members of NKN, the National Knowledge Network. I think it would be good if other SAARC countries also become member of this, and that would be collective gain for the region. I stop here, Dr. Ratna. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Sachin. Thank you very much for giving and covering a very wide range of issues, starting from the production capacity to decarbonization and digitalization and the regional cooperation. Thank you very much for these insightful issues and some of these initiatives of India towards promoting sub-regional, regional cooperation. And I am sure we all can work together for improving lives of everybody. What you said, North-South divide, it's...
You have gone on silent mode. You have gone on silent mode, Dr. Ratna.
Oh, sorry. Can you hear?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So, if you look at how lives have been lost due to COVID, there was no divide. World as an integrated village, we talk in economy, but health and pandemic brought everybody together to face the common challenge for the humanity. But thank you very much for bringing these facts. Now let me turn towards Dr. Posh Raj Pandey from Nepal. He has been smiling. He has so many things to say. Posh Bhai, your time starts now.
Okay, thank you, Rajan Bhai, and good afternoon, everybody. Well, let me join other colleagues to thank SDPI and UNESCAP for availing this opportunity. Especially thanks goes to Dr. Nagesh, Dr. Rajan, and Dr. Abid. Well, listening Dr. Nagesh, Nazir, Fahmida, and Sachin, I think, I don't have anything to add in this intellectual discussions. Nonetheless, I will try to put my views from Nepalese perspective. And I'll be, so I'm looking at the time you have offered, Dr. Rajan. I think it's impossible to address all those questions you raised in the beginning. Nonetheless, I'll present broad-based and qualitative impact of pandemic in Nepal first. Second, opportunity for build back better and implementation of SDG. Third, we'll touch upon the issues of regional cooperations, and if time permits, we'll discuss the role of development partners. Well, before presenting the impact of COVID, let me start with some positive achievement, particularly with regard to the Nepalese economy. Nepal had made considerable progress in human and social development, in inclusiveness and economic growth in the last few years. However, having said this, multi-dimensional poverty, inequality, fragile health system, highly informal economy, and labor market, geographical constraint, including mountainous geographical feature and landlockedness, detrimental impact of climate change. All the challenges continue to pose a serious problem for rapid, inclusive, and sustainable development in Nepal. And we were in the process of re-emerging from devastating impacts of earthquake of 2015. This devil coronavirus disease appeared. And given the speed, scale, and severity of its infections, our policymakers have adopted non-pharmaceutical containment measure, including lockdown. And that measure, and because of those, it has emerged as a combined health, humanitarian, and economic crisis. It has severely affected both aggregate demand and supply side of the economy. It constrained the ability of people to work and the firms to produce. It means there was rising joblessness and unemployment, resulting loss of household income. And for government, there was reduced revenue and accumulation of public debt. For private sector, business and industries, there was heightening risk of bankruptcy. For banking system, there was threat to financial instability. So all these factors could halt or even reverse the progress we made on human development, sustainable development goals, as well as in the criteria of LDC graduation. However, despite all these, Nepal had made overall progress. Some sort of mixed progress in achievement of sustainable development goals. There was good progress in poverty reduction, some progress in human development related goals, such as education, gender equality, and gender empowerment, also on biodiversity, and the goals related to sanitation, energy, and infrastructure. They were all in the right directions, but we lagged on hunger, industrialization, and climate change impact. But the pandemic may erase some of the achievement we made so far. It may slow down the progress of other goals as it demands resetting the priorities because of reallocation of resources to the immediate priority. Well, I mean, despite all this negative, I mean, part of the pandemic, let's look at it from positive perspective. Okay, on positive note, this pandemic has exposed the weakness in our economy, in our state, and in our society, and has provided us some clue to correct, I mean, those weaknesses. Second, I mean, it has taught a lesson on the strength, on the importance of strengthening our health system, as there is a strong link between economic strength and public health, and these are reinforcing each other. And third, it further reinforces that no one should be left behind, as no one is safe until everyone is safe. And fourth, it has provided, as I mean, most of the speakers I mean, mentioned, opportunity to build back better. So here the issue is, how can we utilize, I mean, these opportunities? Maybe first, as Nagesh, I mean, in his opening statement, he mentioned the establishment of robust universal healthcare and social protection system. But if we look at our constitutions, and our constitution has enshrined, I mean, health service and social security as part of fundamental rights. But this pandemic has taught us to expand the scope and enlarge the coverage of these health services and social security based on the right-based and vulnerability-sensitive approach. And the second, this pandemic has provided breathing space, particularly environmental breathing space, as both carbon emission and energy demand were reduced. But the risk is the rebound in emission may be larger than the decline. Once, I mean, all this, I mean, the problem of this lockdown is solved. So it demands to implement reforms that fight climate change, and it also demand policies to decarbonize, which, I mean, previous speakers I mean, highlighted, to decarbonize our economies. And the third, I mean, it also demands, I mean, to upscale, provides opportunity to upscale the investment in digital technology to ensure reliable, affordable, and high-speed internet connection. And the fourth, maybe, I mean, it also indicates to prioritize our sustainable development goals based on the recommendations of UN security advisors. I mean, they are talking about 6 entry points or sustainable development solution network. I mean, they talk about, I mean, 6 transformations. Based on that, we might need to prioritize, I mean, SDG. Okay, let me come to the issues of regional cooperation.
1 minute, Prof.
Okay. Okay, Dr. Nagesh, I mean, I think, I mean, he provided almost exhaustive list of potential areas of cooperation, regional cooperations. I mean, let me touch upon one issue, that is digital technology, because I'm quite fascinated with this digital technology, the way it has emerged as a lifeline through virtual connectivity during the lockdown, the way it has moved the economy and consumption to online mode, the way it has made home the primary control unit. Now I'm participating in a regional event from home. My children are virtually getting educations at home. I'm working from home, and that's some sort of telework. And consumption has been reallocated from mall to home through e-commerce. And then similarly, I mean, this technology, I mean, digital technology has changed and reconfigured our social network. And I mean, it has changed the way, I mean, we discuss and the way we express our love and affinities. And it has also changed the mode of relations between state and the citizen. So all this technology, all this and digital technology, it not only check the spread of infections, but also reduce the economic and social vulnerability also. So I think the regional cooperation in digital technology is a must for South Asian countries. So what could be the areas, I mean, for regional cooperation? Just, I mean, 1 minute, Dr. Ratan. The first could be on building.
Okay, 1 minute, I'm putting timer on.
just building digital skill among academic institutions to upgrade the skill of labor force for participating in the digital era. That could be the one area of cooperation. Second area of cooperation could be sharing the experience, knowledge, and skill among South Asian countries in the areas of e-commerce and digital technology. In the area of e-commerce, and also I'm sharing experience on this, providing public services through digital technology. That is another. And the third could be sharing of real-time information and data. But again, I mean, we need to look at, I mean, the issues of privacy and all other things. Fourth area could be, I mean, cooperation in the areas of digital transformations, including cloud computing, and to make, I mean, this digital technology as regional public good. Third could be cyber security. I mean, another issues could be, fifth area could be cyber security. Sixth could be the promotion of e-commerce, and also, I mean, regional digital payment system. And the fourth and another areas could be that, I mean, collections. And as I move from, I mean, cross-border e-commerce, then we will be losing a space for collecting taxes. So another area could be cooperation among the, I mean, state in living and collecting taxes. And again, my last point, as Sachin, Dr. Sachin, that's already highlighted, India is the leader, I mean, particularly in this digital infrastructure, and India can take the lead and share its experience on building digital infrastructure and skill with other South Asian countries. Okay, I stop over here, and if time permits, I'll come back to that. I mean, the issues.
No, I will come back for the second round. That's why I'm trying to save some time.
Okay, thank you.
But a very wide range, and thanks to see you, Dushni, after a long time. Welcome on camera. But I won't summarize. I know each one of you can extempore, given your experience, speak 48 hours non-stop on South Asia. So giving you 7 minutes time, 10 minutes time is not justice, but this is the life which we are living in. And
48, so you are underestimating, Dr. Ratna.
Sorry,
48 hours, you are underestimating our capacity.
I am saying extempore speaking. You can speak for months. I mean, even in sleep, you can give a lecture for 48 hours without any interruption. That I know. The regional cooperation and the commitment for South Asia is so deeply rooted in all of you. I have been seeing you for almost 20 years or more, and so I know it. So let me now turn to the original moderator of the session, who skipped because he wanted, perhaps he was hesitant to play the dual role of moderating and also, speaking on the Pakistan's perspective. The host, main Karta Dharta of this event, and thank you, Abid Bhai, personally also for tying up with SCAP. I'm seconding what Dr. Nagesh said in giving us this opportunity to organize this panel with SDPI. So you have the floor. Of course, you also have 7 to 10 minutes time, and I will remind you 1 minute before that. Thank you very much. You have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you, Rajan. First of all, my gratitude for all the influential thought leaders from South Asia for joining this panel. As I was explaining yesterday, that the whole theme of this conference, Sustainable Development in the Times of COVID-19, is actually to assess the positive and negatives of COVID vis-a-vis Sustainable Development Agenda, Sustainable Development Goals, and of course, social sector development agenda in a broader context. Earlier, colleagues and especially the parliamentarian from Pakistan, Ms. Romina Khurshid, she highlighted all the cons of COVID vis-a-vis social sector development and sustainable development. I endorse all of her points, but being a born optimistic, I always try to see the silver lining. And if I look at the silver lining in this challenge, I think this has actually brought back social sector development back on the policy radars of government. So, and not only government of Pakistan, but governments of the region. So governments, they can't now keep on ignoring the social sector needs, the SDG 1, poverty reduction, SDG 2, food security, health, gender equality, mainstreaming, water, sanitation, education. So you name anything, and now, of course, it has to be a non-discretionary and mandatory expense in our current account expenditures and in government's expenditure. The second point that I wanted to raise here, that this is not the time for following austerity measures. This is the time for fiscal expansion. And I think for the time being, we should ignore all the macro indicators and GDP and fiscal deficit and current account deficit, et cetera, et cetera. For me, the yardstick for measuring the performance of my government as well as for South Asia is not what ADB or Economist or World Bank, Economist magazine, not the economists, the Economist or World Bank, they come and they tell me. My yardstick is that even if there is fiscal deficit, even if there is a decline in GDP, how much is it that our governments, they are spending on social protection, they are spending on health sector, they are spending on maintaining a balance between lives and livelihood, because today's investment would actually define the bouncing back capacity of economies 2 to 3 years down the road. If today we try to balance, show a clean balance sheet and try not to compromise on our fiscal expansion, we may have some good macroeconomic indicator, but we will not be investing in our future, which is a must. The third thing that I wanted to say that now looking at the response and looking at the response from South Asia, we have three scenarios that we can follow. The first one is business as usual, where we have some sort of regional, sub-regional silos. We can either keep on operating within our sub-regional silos and keep on duplicating, replicating our efforts and reinventing the wheel. The second, whereby we can have the best use of the already established instruments and institutions under the SARC platform. Already SARC meeting of governors of state bank was discussed. SARC food bank is there. SARC disaster management center is there, and there are many other organizations and sub-institution of SARC that can be actually activated. So we can have a regional approach to the challenges that the region is facing. And the best case scenario is where we can share and pool our resources, and we can look at the capacity, the pharmaceutical capacity of India and Pakistan, the PPEs and gloves and mask manufacturing capacities of India and Pakistan, and of course Bangladesh is also there. Try to look at clean energy from Bhutan and Nepal. There are each country, each one of us has a certain competitive advantage and has certain niche. And perhaps the best case scenario or utopian scenario, I would say, would be whereby we can have some sort of regional cooperation in the times of COVID. Now, the question would arise that whether this utopian scenario is possible at all. And I would say that in the new normal, it's very much possible. We could have never imagined last year that we will be having this sort of mega congregations online are actually turning to complete digital transformation, at least in the urban centers of South Asia. But we are there. We could have never thought that countries, they would pour billions and trillions for fiscal expansion, or major economies, they would have negative interest rate, but that is happening. So I think these challenges, these troubled times, they are actually, they give you a jerk and they offer opportunities. Now it's up to us which scenario we would like to follow. We can pick any of the scenario, but depending on our choices today, that would determine the future of our future generations. And I'm sure that we want to leave a good future for our future generations. We would not like them to blame, actually, most of us who are sitting in this virtual setting today, with all the access to the key decision makers, with all the knowledge and with all the awareness and conscious to be able to guide our decision makers and our governments. If we are not able to do our work right, and especially when the UN agencies are also with us, then perhaps we'll be losing out the moment, and I'm sure we can't afford to do
it. Thank you, Abid bhai. Well ahead of time. Thank you very much. And thank you for taking us to a very new dimension on these three scenarios. And I think we all agree, and the best case scenario. And I think the panel has also talked about COVID bringing in this opportunity. SARC, there was a lull in the momentum, and then it went, and so the SARC COVID fund was created, and then the ministers, health ministers met. RBI governors have met, and I think this is the right time to kickstart the process. And I think what even you said early at the start, perhaps a platform where free flow of exchange among the parliamentarians or politicians or political think tanks even perhaps could be a good process to now kickstart and learn from each other. There is no need to reinvent the wheel, at least in South Asia. You are absolutely right. So now let me turn to Dr. Dusri Vila Kung from Sri Lanka. Madam, you have the floor.
Thank you, Rajan. I'm going to break the South Asian mold and make your job very easy by not taking up my 6-7 minutes, because I think everything's been said and there's very little for me to add. But let me start by re-congratulating Abid and the SDPI team. I was in an earlier panel with them and UNESCAP as well for putting this session together. Abid mentioned that he's on panels from 9 in the morning to 10 in the night. So I don't really know how he does it. With regards to the SDGs, I think all the speakers have from their individual country experiences indicated that with a decade to go before the deadline ends in 2030, there are clearly concerns that the financial and economic fallout of COVID-19 can set back progress of achieving SDGs. I think many of us were already behind even before the COVID hit us. And clearly the economic fallout will also have an impact on how governments perceive their future actions. Government programs and priorities can change as they try to rebuild the economy. And for this part of the world where most of our countries are cash strapped, I think additional challenges in terms of reduced ODA funding available, and as well as the fact that most of us will also need to find new sources of funding for vaccinations and other related expenditures. So one option that I see, and I don't work directly on SDGs, but I see in the literature out there globally, is discussions on scaling back the levels of ambitions on SDGs. that some countries may actually opt to do that, and governments may choose to pursue growth. I mean, this issue came up even earlier in the previous panel. Is it growth or is it development? And as an economist, I would certainly back development. But my sense is that if you look at, the comparative projections that are being put out there, governments are under pressure to show that they have tackled COVID-19, and one of those indicators is going to be how fast is your economy going to rebound. And that number is, whether we like it or not, is going to be captured by what our GDP estimates are for 2021. So that, I think, is really the reality that we are going to face. And in that context, issues of equity and sustainable development can be sort of pushed back with governments thinking, well, let's get recovery going and then pay attention to these other issues. So I think it is there that I see a role for South Asian regional cooperation to help governments to get that recovery process going. We know that consumption and production patterns are changing because of COVID. There were references to technological changes. We are all relying on deliveries, on online transactions. Production patterns are changing as supply chains are also recalibrating. And for most of us, sustained economic recovery is going to depend on income and consumption picking up, because COVID has morphed from a supply shock to a demand shock. And here, if you look at the rest of Asia, they are making progress. RCEP is pretty much on our doorstep. And that will give a boost to growth and recovery efforts of many of the Asian economies, ASEAN, etc. So what is South Asia's collective response to helping the region, South Asian region, to recover? We have trade agreements, but we're not talking about any of it. So I think that's an area for regional cooperation that really must pick up. My second and last point on the SDGs is that clearly SDGs provide the best framework for resilience and building back better. And there may be issues that get priority, for instance, health, inequality, urban development, etc. But others like climate change, etc., may get pushed back. And I think as a collective, perhaps there are three things that we can do. First is to understand whether there is any, reprioritizing of this vast agenda. And I know that's not easy, given that there are practical difficulties. They are all interconnected, and success of one often depends on the success of the other. But issues like technology cuts across many of these goals and targets. So perhaps South Asia can collectively look at that. The second is to look at the effectiveness of public spending. Again, that came up in that previous panel, that we are talking about lack of resources, but we are not even looking to see whether the money that we pump in is delivering the outputs and outcomes as effectively as they can and should. And third and final point is that collective action is clearly going to be needed to keep governments on track, to ensure that they keep within the SDG 2030 agenda. And without global cooperation, without regional cooperation, I think it will be much more difficult to steer them to keep their eye on these commitments and ensure that they are not overlooked in the next critical 12 to 18 months or so. So I'm going to stop at that.
Thank you, Lusri. Thank you very much for bringing in another dimension, and as rightly said, how South Asia or SAARC or SAFTA or SATIS responds to this challenge of COVID is, to RCEP is important. And across the board basis, I have seen technology has been stressed where it is very important. We are left with some 7-8 minutes now, and the session will automatically, it's on timer, so it will end. So I will just dwell, maybe request you for, there are 1 or 2 questions. Let me just read it for you. Some of them have been already answered. You could have seen in the chat box. But one, it comes from Khushbu Ejaj. What initiatives SAARC has taken in order to achieve targets for SDGs in the time of COVID pandemic? I think a lot of answer to these questions have been given. The another question was from Arshad Khan. What did for the poor peoples in all over the world who are struggling to live their life in the pandemic COVID-19? And then it is that can we convert political economy into circular economy through regional cooperation? These are the 3 questions, but I just would like to throw this to the panel, which is there. You got half minutes, but total time 2 minutes, because we need to go for a concluding section, which will be given. So quick, in 2 minutes, I mean a half minute for each one of you, if you have anything to come for the second round. Sorry about the time, but thank you very much. Anybody, you can just speak. Who wants to take?
Okay, let me touch upon the issues of circular economy. And that regional cooperation in the area of circular economy, I think, I mean, it's quite innovative idea, and I appreciate, I mean, this idea. But for this circular economy, we have to adopt the principle of triple win outcome. What does that mean? That is trade cooperations, I mean, or regional cooperation to achieve the goal of circular economy should be a win for development, a win for trade, and also win for environment. I mean, under that situations, I mean, we need to cooperate to promote circular economy. I stop over here. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see any more intervention. Okay, Sachin bhai, boliye.
Thank you, Dr. Ratna. I would just make one point which in a way had appeared, but probably needs to be articulated, is the collective approach of the South Asian countries towards the reforms of SDRs. And I think the way IMF can bring in flexibility for countries in terms of coping up with the post-pandemic scenario, in case of some of the West Asian countries, particularly Jordan, IMF Executive Board has shown some flexibility. I would say that for South Asian countries, a collective view, maybe as part of the central bank governors initiative, the SAARC finance, and also the finance ministers meeting, it should pave way in terms of what strategy we require, and then we strengthen it at the G20 platform and at the BRICS platform for collective view of the South Asian countries. And I think it's important that we try to work towards the SDR reforms. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Sachin, for this. Thanks for this. May I now request Mr. Riaz Fatyana Sahab. He has been chair and patiently has been listening. So, sir, you have the floor for your concluding remarks. Riaz Sahab. Unmute your mic, please.
Are you listening?
Yes.
Thank you. First of all, I'm grateful for this such a kind program organized by SDPI and UNESCAP. Especially, I congratulate Dr. Abid Suleri, who is the main organizer. I also welcome Dr. Nagesh Kumar. I met him in Sri Lanka a few years back, 2 years back. and especially Dashni Veera Kaun from Sri Lanka, Dr. Fahmida Khatun from Bangladesh, Nazir Kabiri from Afghanistan, Raj Pandey from Nepal, Professor Sachin Chaturvedi from India, Dr. Ratna, everyone, Khurshid Alam, Romina, Khurshid Alam, and other participants, all are welcome here. I think our first person who was detected by COVID was on 26th February 2020. And till now, we lost 9,000 precious lives due to COVID. And first phase, people were more afraid. And
sorry, we are okay. He got disconnected. Let's wait for a moment. He might be back. There must be some. Yes, please continue. Yes, sir. Please continue.
So there was two challenges. One was COVID. One was hunger. And Prime Minister Imran Khan of Pakistan announced a smart lockdown. Due to this, we reduce COVID cases as well as we encourage private and government sector to provide jobs. So I think we faced three main challenges. One is social, the second one is economic, third one is political. In social, in all South Asian countries, we have a different culture than West. And that is to handshake with others and to attend condolence ceremonies like janaza, kul, and marriages, everything lost. Secondly, we smell that there were gender-based violations due to everyone is locked in their house. Thirdly, education sector suffered badly. Students are all in South Asian countries, mostly schools, colleges were closed. This is a big challenge for education sector. Fourth, health sector, at least one thing is very important. We improve our health sector. We improved, enhanced from 3 to 130 labs and provided so many ventilators and oxygen beds, etc. So I can say that at present, Pakistan's health sector is improved than past. Third, the second one is economic challenge. Of course, unemployment was very high side. Poverty of our SDG goal 1 and 2 was very badly affected, and hunger and poverty. Secondly, and government announced three things. Hello?
Yes, please. Please continue.
Some kind of doom. So government announced a package for industry and they reduced bank markup. So this helped the situation. Third is political crisis. And we have 5 years tenure in National Assembly and Parliament and provincial assemblies, and we lost approximately 1 year. So all parliamentarians elected representatives, public representatives across South Asia lost their precious time of 1 year of their tenure. And Parliament's function for oversight and monitoring is also affected. We locked down our assemblies, parliaments, and reduced meetings of standing committees. So I think public at large suffered in politics as well. Thirdly, in Pakistan, unfortunately, opposition is on road. In all over the world, everyone is in their house, but in Pakistan, opposition are organized big rallies and public meetings. So this is a major cause of spread of COVID. Thirdly, the second phase, which came in few weeks before, there are some more challenges. Number one, there is less symptoms. People don't know that there is no fever, no pain in the body, nothing. Everything is all right, but he's carrying COVID. So this is more dangerous, that people don't know that they are COVID patient and spreading to other people. Third, cold weather is another problem. Third, in second phase, people are more easy. they don't implement government direction and SOP. So I think this is another part of that. During first phase, they were afraid, but in second phase, they are more brave, and this is very dangerous that they don't want to implement SOP. Our National Parliamentary Task Force on SDGs is also working, but our activities are also suffered. I propose that because SDGs and human rights both is same, if you realize. So there is need to help poor and students and medical staff on top agenda. Secondly, availability of vaccine to all countries should be ensured by World Health Organization, UN organization, and others. Third, we need care of climate, because oxygen is major demand of everyone to overcome COVID. So we should plant more trees. And we should also shift from regular sessions to virtual sessions. So parliaments can be more functional if they start virtual sessions.
All the friends, it was a nice virtual get-together. I will request you to please disseminate the program and the links within your organizations. We would appreciate participation from your colleagues and from your networks. That would bring diversity to the views and new dimensions to the discussion if we have a collective voice from South Asia. Thank you for joining.
Thank you, Abid Bhai. Thank you.